The wellness seminar, we have arrived. So as promised, I said that I would be putting this on to try and educate people on what wellness is, what the category is, how you should be posing, the criteria specifics for the different federations. So we are here at Crayford today, putting that on now. We're a little bit early, I'm just getting set up. I've got a little bit of a presentation to do for everybody, just to give a little bit of background and insight into what the category is and everything that I've just spoken about. And then we're going to go through some posing. I'm going to show people how to pose. I've got one of my clients, so I'm going to use a little bit of a prop to walk through exactly what we are looking for in each pose and what not to do and what to do. So stay tuned. There's a lot of content going down, and I hope you all find it very useful. Thank you for coming. So the kind of like order of how I was going to do things is run through like some real basics first of like wellness, like criteria, what you're looking for, posing, talk a little bit about training as well. I see like a lot of girls who are like aiming for wellness, getting their training split completely wrong, like not doing enough volume in certain areas, doing too much upper body, and just understanding like what you actually need to do to try and like drive yourself into the category. So I'm going to run through some bits on here. Can everyone see that? Like it's very light in here, so you might be able to see it. Like you don't need to look at it too much, it's more just like something for me to have in the background. But I've got some stuff on there that I'm going to run through, and then just, I want it to be like, just talk to me, like quite interactive, just shout things out, ask questions, like it's a bit more of a discussion more than anything, alright? Obviously some of you are coached by me, some of you aren't, so you'll all be doing completely different things. So I don't want you to like question what you're doing necessarily now, but it's more just like, this is my approach and how I do things and how I believe like you're going to get the best out of what you need to be doing for the category. So, first thing, you should know who that is if you're all wellness. But that's Francelle, obviously she's the winner, she's the Olympia winner for the last 2 years. And she's the best example that you can see for like what wellness should be. So this is the criteria for the IFBB, literally taken straight from the NPC website. So division for females with athletic physiques that showcase more body mass in the hips, glutes and thighs. Upper body is developed but not the same degree as the lower body. So it is important that I think wellness athletes need to understand that you still need to be like, have a strong physique. Like I'll see some wellness girls that never ever train their upper body, and while they say like it's not about having big shoulders or a big back, you still need to have like a dominant physique. You need to walk out on stage and look strong. You need to have, you know, cap shoulders. You need to have a physique where you walk out and you've got a structure to you. Like if you're just lower body dominant but you haven't got anything else going on, you're going to look pretty imbalanced. Although we're trying to create a slightly imbalanced physique, you still need to look like conditioned and trained throughout your whole body. So that's really important. Now, PCA, obviously, there'll be a few of you here who will do other federations as well, not just IFBB, but the category specifics for PCA is exactly the same thing. Like if you're to read that, it's nearly word for word exactly what the IFBB is. So it's still promoting, it says promoting healthy lifestyle. Obviously, we're not looking for like an emaciated physique, we're looking for something that's athletic. Ladies must show more muscularity in the glutes, hips and thighs. Upper body must be developed to show good level of fitness, but more emphasis on the lower. Condition and presentation are essential, and stage presence, etiquette and tanning will be part of the judging as well. And I think people miss this, like you can turn up to stage and you can have like the best physique, but if you don't know how to display it, or like you miss out like your makeup or your hair or your tan, or you know, I see a lot of people do the tan themselves. That's great, it's a good way to save money, it's fine, but make sure you do it correctly, make sure you prep correctly. Like it's still just as important. Like your physique is going to form probably 60-70% of your criteria, but everything else is going to be the thing that tops you off. If you've got two people that look very complete on stage, and what's the difference between their physique? They're both as strong as each other. The thing that's going to tip it over the edge is like, how are they presenting themselves? How do they look as a complete package? Do they look confident? Is their hair nice? Is their makeup nice? Have they actually thought about what they look like on stage? So posing is something that I get frustrated about. People get wrong all the time. I always have a rant about this. And generally for like most of the federations it's the same, like IFBB, PCA, it's pretty much all the same. There's two slight differentials in the back pose with PCA and IFBB, and we'll run through all that together. But essentially the front pose is this. This is Issa, who came second in Olympia. And this is your first front-facing pose when you come out and see the judges. So you'll always start with your left leg forward as your front shot, and you're going to quarter turn to the right. But essentially this is about showing like lower body dominance in the bottom half. You have your backhand on the hip, front leg forward, and you're essentially trying to accentuate your physique. So you're trying to look as dominant and large in the bottom half as possible, with a small waist, but still showing then an X frame at the top. Back shot. Okay, so something that's butchered all the time. Back shot is about showing as much depth to the glutes as physically possible, and we'll go through this together when we do some posing. But we don't want to see like arms bent off to the side. We're not looking for a lat spread. We're not looking for hair around the front and showing your back. So many people go into like this back shot and they think to make their glutes look bigger, they're going to do like a half squat and sit back like this, which is definitely not what you want. Like when you do this, all you're going to do is lengthen your hamstrings, and if anything, you're going to lose muscularity. So what you want to do is be able to push back through the glutes as far as possible, because you're trying to show through this tie in here with as much depth as possible. If you've got a bent knee here and you're sitting into the movement, you're going to stretch through the hamstring, you're going to lengthen the hamstring, so you're going to lose depth here, and you're going to lose a lot of that time because you're literally just stretching through, which is not what you want. So we want to sit back into the heels as much as possible, straight legs, pushing back through the glutes as much as possible, also keeping the upper body tall. You'll notice here with Issa, like she isn't leaning forward. Like a lot of girls will bend the knee and lean right forward here, and you remember the judges are sat here, right? So your waist height is like where my face is. If you are leaning forward like that, from the angle, all I'm going to see is like your hips and then your head. Some people have a stronger side, usually do down to like mobility and stuff like that. Like you hate posing on the other side, and that's just due to mobility. But the more you avoid doing that side, the worse it will be. You need to practice it, if anything, like more. Put yourself in that position more, because the more comfortable you can get in like your uncomfortable poses, the better they'll be. Last year I ended up finding that my worst pose by the end of my season ended up being my best pose, because I spent so long trying to get it right that now what was my stronger pose I'm having to work on, because it's now like my weaker one. So doing things like mobility work and stuff is really important to make sure that you can actually hit one side just as well as like you can the other. So many people are going to these competitions and they're not reading the criteria. Like it's on the website, it's free. Like you don't need a coach for that, like it's there, it's free on the website. So this essentially is exactly the same as the IFBB, apart from one hand on the hip. So you've got here, rear facing position, feet hip width apart, one hand on the hip and one off the hip, emphasis on lower half of the body, so hair should not be removed from the athlete's back. Yeah, so we stay covered all the time, like this is wellness, we're not looking for a judging on the back, right? Condition, may or may not be able to see that very well. Now, I think that something that is really clear to see often is people think they're wellness when they're not, because they've got a lot of fat in their legs, right? And this is no like disrespect to anybody, but to stand on a wellness stage, like your condition needs to be the same as everybody else. Like you need to get lean, whether you're a figure athlete, whether you're a bikini athlete, you need to take off all your body fat. You need to get down to very, very, very low levels of body fat. It's slightly different than if you were doing something like figure, where like you come down to a real grain and you are actually probably the most peeled you could be, I would say. Like wellness and bikini, like if you think you're lean, you can probably be a bit leaner. I would always say that you want to be as lean as physically possible, because then you can always reverse up and fill back up. So if you're a little bit too lean, they don't want to see striations in the glutes or in the muscle bellies, you can fill that out with food. So never use that as an excuse not to be lean enough. Be like, oh, I'm about right there, because as soon as you put food in and you fill, like you're always going to look different to how you will like when you're like depleted and dry. So always make sure that you are driving for as much condition as physically possible. When you're on stage as well and you're covered in tan, like you'll never look quite as conditioned as you do like stood in the gym after a training session. Like that's me after training sessions in the gym. I've got a striated glutes and I've got veins in my eyeballs. Like, I didn't look like that on stage. Like, so don't underestimate how lean you need to be able to do the category. And just be realistic with yourself as well about like maybe how much body fat you've actually got on your legs as to like what you think is actually muscle. And this is why I'd always recommend like you want to be coming down and doing like a mini cut first to get lean and to show like what is actually there before you can actually start to build up again, because a lot of people will go through life feeling like they're lower body dominant, or grab hold of them, put them on a mini cut and be like, you probably fit bikini more than anything else. And it's just because you spent a long time holding and gaining body fat in the lower half. And we do as women, like it's a hormonal thing, but we do. speak at me, I'm not scary. Is training. So like the girls who obviously train with me will know this, and sometimes like girls get their training program and they're like, oh holy shit, like I have to train such legs, fucking hell. But it's really important that there's a few things with training, like you need to be able to drive enough volume that you actually are going to change, right? And we call that like your minimum effective volume. And like for somebody who's training like a push-pull leg split and they need to grow everywhere, you can distribute volume a lot more, okay? Because you need to create a bit of adaptation everywhere across the body. When you're doing wellness, you're asking your body to put on a substantial amount of muscle in one area that is not very like genetically normal. Like you're asking your body to grow amount of muscle in your legs that isn't normal, especially as a natural athlete. Like if you're a natural athlete and you're only doing like your minimum effective volume training on legs a week, like you're not really going to grow. You're not. If you're doing like 8 to 10 working sets per session, probably like 50% of the week, like you're not going to be driving very much stimulus that is going to actually cause much change. Not enough to be able to cause any kind of dramatic hypertrophy within like a year period or something like that. So we're looking to be able to push the boundaries as to what is recoverable. So that might be like 13 to 16 working sets, maybe a session. And you need to make sure that, and this is depends who you coach by and that feedback that you give, but you need to be able to train so much that you can just recover enough to be able to go into the next session again. If you're spending too long between sessions recovering, so you might not train legs for 3 days, 4 days, you're doing too much back and upper body and push in the middle, you're not going to be driving enough stimulus to grow. Like you're simply not. And I'll use Jelena as an example in a minute of kind of what we've done in like less than a year, and that's through driving a hell of a lot of volume, but enough that we're able to recover. And we spent a little bit of time at the beginning trying to get the right amount of recovery. Like the first bit of feedback we had, Jelena was like, mate, I'm fucking trashed, like I can't do this. So we pulled back a little bit and we moved some sessions around, and we found about right where she was able to recover and be able to train enough that she was still enjoying her sessions and wasn't dreading the idea of going to the gym, but enough that we were able to actually recover from it. So that is really important. Like a lot of the time I'll see like splits, like this is an example of a split that I might do for like wellness. Don't know if you want to see, I'll stand it away a little bit. But you've got probably 70% of your week like just training lower body. If you're training 5 sessions a week, you probably want 4 of them to be like lower body dominant. You might have one of them that's a little bit mixed, like sometimes I'll put like tag delts onto the end of someone's glute session or delts onto the end of someone's quad session, something like that. But generally, like if your upper body's fairly good and doesn't need too much work, like one good upper body session a week with quite high volume is going to be enough for you. We have to remember that although we need a strong upper body, when we're on stage and you're standing next to somebody, we are doing wellness. So if there is a comparison of 2 people, although you need a strong upper body, if your upper body is slightly stronger than that person's because you've spent the year trying to grow it, but that means you've neglected the lower half and their lower half is stronger than yours, like the category is lower body dominant, so they're going to beat you, okay? So we need to make sure that while we need to train our upper body, not at the detriment of growing our legs. Like that's something that maybe once you get to sort of pro status, the judges might be like, yeah, okay, well, in order to maybe pick the post next time, you probably need a little bit more delts, and they're going to be a little bit more specific. But at amateur level, like somebody with slightly bigger delts isn't going to beat you. Like the person with the bigger glutes is going to beat you, like simply. I know you were. I think you've just come back from Portugal. But this is a little bit of an example. So just, I mean, you can't see so well here, but I'll have people to come look at the screen in a bit if they want to. Now, I think that this is like a bit of an epitome of like all the stuff what I just said. Like you need to try and understand that one, this stuff takes time. Like people rush this, they're like, oh, I want to do wellness. Like, okay, so let's jump on stage. You need to be able to take the time to be able to build the physique that you need, because wellness is something that, especially unassisted, is going to take you some time, right? Like if you're not taking any assistance is another question, but if you're not and you're a natural athlete, like doing this day in, day out, over and over again is what is going to build you the physique that you want. And you can say that for any category, but I think it's even more specific for wellness, because apart from like men's physique, it's probably the only category where you have to be so dominant in one area. Like bikini is a bit of everything, all right, it's glutes, it's hamstrings, it's quads, but it's fairly balanced. Like wellness, you're asking yourself to just force growth in the bottom half of your body. It's going to take time. And getting that balance right is really, really difficult. So it's so different to other categories for that. Men's physique is similar, like they're very top heavy dominant, but they've got a lot of back, they've got a lot of delts, they've got a lot of chest, they've got arms, like still not quite the same. Men's bodybuilding is different, it's more of everything. Men's classic is different, it's more of everything. Women's figures, more of everything. But wellness is going to take time. Now, if you get it right, like if you get volume right, if you get training right, if you get food right, if you manage it well, like you can make a hell of a lot of progress in a fairly short space of time. Like this is 10 months, not 10 months, 8 months, May to January, 8 months, 8 months work, and then don't. So like when I was talking to you about starting off and understanding where you're at, and like, are you actually wellness or are you not? Like me and Jelena had that conversation at the beginning. It's like, this is what you want to do, but we've got to see what you're working with. So we need to do a mini cut first. We need to clean up. We need to see what we're doing, and using that time to like work out how we're going to train. What can we recover from? Like, how are we actually going to develop what we need to develop? How is your training? Like, you can do kickbacks 10 times a week, but if you do them really badly, like you ain't going to grow any glutes. Like, it's true. Jelena would send me like videos, like all the girls doing it, send me videos of their training, like, am I doing this well? Am I doing that well? We need to do a bit like this, a bit more like that. And then using that time to learn to train well, tidying up, getting cleaner, and then looking what we're working with. And during that time, you will grow, like you're still eating, you're still training, and then we can see what we're working with. So after a few months, like we're here with Jelena, like, okay, well, you've grown, like you look different, you actually look like a small wellness girl now. We've pulled off all the body fat, and you've actually got the right physique and the right shape. So yeah, you can, like, we can do this, we can grow forward. One thing I would say as well is like, people think to grow muscle, especially something like wellness, you need to put on loads of tissue, therefore you need to put on take in a lot of food, and you need to get fat. Like, you don't need to get fat. Like, I think you can see the difference there. Jelena in the right photo is actually 4 kilos lighter than in the first photo. I feel like you came to me about 68 kilos or something like that. She's now like 65, and we haven't escalated scale weight, like we haven't allowed that to go. We've just been patient with pushing food, patient with training, patient with like weekly check-ins, and it's not like she's coming in every week and I'm like, oh, we'll change this, we'll change that. It's like, yeah, this is good, we're on track, crack on. Like, we don't always need to chase food and chase progressions, because all that's going to do is make you further and further and further away from like actually getting lean when you prep. You have to remember, you can only grow muscle at a certain rate. Now we talk about a natural athlete here, like an assisted athlete's different, but a natural athlete, like if you're putting on half a kilo a week, like, not going to lie to you, most of that's body fat. It is. Whether you've just come out of a prep or whether you're like deep into an off season, it's pretty irrelevant. Like, if you're putting on half a kilo, even like 0.3, 0.4 a week, like, that isn't going to be muscle. I'm sorry, it's breaking anyone's heart, but it's not going to be. So managing that rate again is going to be really, really important. So like, don't take, like, come away from the scales a little bit. You don't not constantly need to see scale progression. Like, visuals like this are really important. And like, what I'll always do with people is like, you can do it yourself, but just constantly take photos and put them side by side. Like, we would do this through the process, like, okay, we've been doing this 2 months, look how far you've come, and you'll be like, oh, that's wild, that's pretty good. Like, because it's hard to see every single week those changes that you make. So just I would say like 4 weeks, just pull your last 4 weeks, like the first one, and then your last 4, and just put them next to each other. And I would probably do that every 4 weeks, just like pull them next to each other, just so you can see the progress, and just like realize like the difference that you're making. Time, like, by the time like Amara gets on stage, we will have gone through like a clean-up and the growth phase and then a prep, because we will have taken the time to say, right, where are you at, we need to pull this off, and then we need to grow, and then we need to prep. Like, give yourself enough time. Don't just think like, oh, I really fancy doing a show, and then just jump into a prep when you haven't got the bit before, right? Like, me and Jelena will have worked together for like 14, 13 months by the time she stands on stage. It's like, that work beforehand is going to make a difference to what she looks like when she gets there. If we started prep now, like, and she came to me still looking like she was on the left, like, she won't look like she does now, obviously. Right, I'm going to use Jelena as a little bit of a prop, but what we'll do is I'll go through like each pose with her so you can all see, and then what we'll do is we can all turn around and face the mirror, and then we'll go through poses, and I'll like move you all, and we'll have an opportunity to like actually go through everything together. So come stand here. Judges, and that is your leading leg's going to be your left leg forward and your right leg back. Now if you jump into that pose, pretty much perfect. Like, what we want to see here, back foot, if we two side on like this, you end up actually hiding a lot of your quad sweep, because your quad sweep is like on the outside of your quad here, right? Now if you're completely side on, you're going to lose that. So you want to be about like 45 degrees, as you can see there. So you're actually going to like gain a little bit of sweep here. Then
Your front foot, you don't want it too far wide, you don't want it too close to you. You want it kind of like just in front of your back foot so you're able to tip back into the hip. I actually think what might be a better idea is if me and you stand there and go face the road and I do it at the same time. Everyone's going to try and do this at the same time, right? So that's probably better. So what we want here is this front foot, you don't want it too wide because you're going to have a gap between your feet there and you're not going to look very like dominant through here. This pose is about being as narrow as you can be through the bottom without looking like a bikini girl, but you're trying to create like as much width here, tiny waist and narrowness at the bottom because that's going to accentuate your proportions, right? So you want kind of 45 degrees on your back foot, all the weight in your back foot, like you should be able to pretty much like stand on one leg. Then this foot, I would always say like you kind of want your heels just in front of each other. So if you made a straight line in front of you and looked in the mirror, like your heels are pretty much like in line with each other, okay? Knees aren't so far apart you've got a gap of air. They're kind of like just touching if you were to look through the mirror, okay? And then what you want to do is put all your weight into that back hip, okay? So push back into that back hip as far as you can here. Good. Like you see what's doing here, like heels are in front of each other. There isn't a gap between the knees. Like if she was to open up here, like she's not going to look very like dominant through the glutes because she's hiding it because she's just creating loads of width through the knees. So what we want to do here, once you sat into that back hip, is think about like trying to contract through the adductor a little bit. Like imagine you're in the abduction machine and like you're almost in that position trying to put a little bit of tension through this, and it'll make your glute go from being like super flat to like popping, right? Yeah, you can see that when you load, yeah? Perfect. The idea here is as well, we've got a nice tiny little waist. We want to show as much top line as possible because the wider we can be through the top, the smaller our waist is going to look. Now if we stand shoulders and hips and feet all in the same direction, we ain't going to create any kind of ratios. We always want to think about twisting something in half, like you're bringing a towel out. So you sat back into that hip. Now you want to bring that top of your body round as much as you can. Now when your hand is on your waist here, think about putting your knuckles or the flats of your fingers against your belly there, okay? Now I always try and say to people like your little finger like just to the side of where your belly button is, right? And then how I recommend doing it is trying to almost like drag your elbow round towards the mirror. Because if you just do your shoulder, you'll end up like hunching. Whereas if you drag the elbow around, you're naturally going to pull that top line round, okay? That's good. Now this arm that hangs, we don't want a lat spread. We literally want it to be quite relaxed down here. We don't want to hide the lat, but we just want it to kind of sit down by our side, but we don't want to cover our glutes. We want a little bit of a gap, maybe like 2 inches or so. Yeah. Sit back. Literally like, I'm going to just like dart your toe into the ground. Good. Sit back into that straight leg. Good. Now this here, your fist, rotate it in a little bit. That's it, so you can't, that's it. Turn the hips out a little bit. Don't put any weight on that foot. Stand on one leg, and you stand on your back leg. There you go, that's it. Now, straight leg. Back leg needs to be straight as well. Sit back, rotate, turn this forward a little bit. Sit back and tack it back. Really try and touch me with your bum. Push it towards me, like the idea. There you go. Yeah? Yeah. When you're in this position, like Mira just asked a good question, are you rotating the knee out or in? You're not. Like your toe and your ankle, your knee almost want to be in a straight line towards the mirror, right? No. I would just turn your foot a little bit like that and then bring your foot a tiny bit closer to you. That's it. All the weight on this leg and then that on your toe. That's better. Nice. Straight leg. And then just try and keep that on. Yeah, nice. Come a little bit more 45 degrees forward. There you go. Oh, you've got such a little feet. That front foot, move it forward a little bit and then move it in a little bit. So like your heels are in front of each other. Yeah, good. Now tip back a little bit into this hip. Just relax this hand a little bit. Yep. There you go. There. Good. Yeah. And then bring this onto your toe a little bit more for me. But all the weight in here, so you should be able to like pick this up and just drop it on your toe like this. Oh, that's true. Yeah. I would knock this leg out a little bit more, like lock it, back, lean backwards, lean backwards. Oh, okay. Great. That's better. Yeah. More rotation here. think you can widen the stance at the bottom a tiny bit.
Yeah.
Not quite that much coming. That's better. Just
Yeah.
watch that you're not kicking your heel in like that.
Yeah.
Like try and keep your foot.
Foot.
Try and keep it straight. Like a lot of people do this. Like, try and keep it.
That's a really bad
That's
position.
better.
Yeah.
And now I think if you rotate a little bit more, that's it. And then bring this round. That's nice. Because the more you can get this round, the more glute we're going to see, right? The more you rotate through this, the more you're going to bring this round, right? But at the same time, you want to force that. Shake it so hard this.
Yeah, it
You
is.
just rotate this out a little bit. You want it so then they're like not a massive gap of air, but you're also like not covering the knees. You want it like just there. You go. That's it. Good. Transitions, but don't worry about it too much now. So we're from here. Like the next shot is a quarter turn to the right. Okay, so this is still your front leg. This is the dominant one towards the judges. You're going to turn to the right hand side. Okay. Now you can do, if you want to do a bit of a transition, you can. All the weight goes on that front leg side on. Nice. And then what we're looking for is fully locked out front leg, back foot then goes onto the toe. Again, all the posing is a shift of weight from one leg to the other. So on this side, on this pose, all the weight is on the left leg and your right leg is basically free. You should be able to just move your foot quite freely. So, your turn, mate. So, Jolene here, like what we want to see with your foot positioning in this is that we're not too wide here, like that is not going to do anything for a nice dense, like mid-arse, glute, quads, whatever. We don't want to be super narrow here because we're not like a bikini girl. We want enough width that we're showing enough depth through the quads here without a massive, massive gap of space, okay? So my recommendation is always, if you look in the mirror, your toe is literally pretty much in front of where your other toe would be. Sorry, I'm making hold this frame. So I would say Jolene slightly wider with this stance, very slightly. Good. And then what we're looking for here, you want to be as side on as possible. And the idea is you want to put as much weight. A lot of people end up standing like this, awful. What you want to do is put as much weight into that glute as you possibly can. Like you want to be pushing it as high as you can towards the wall behind you, like you're doing an IDL. And then, as you're sat into it, backhand again goes on the waist, exactly the same position. And again, we're trying to force that upper body round by leading with the elbow. Arm wants to be no lat spread, no turned up wrists, but we're looking for a relaxed arm down, but you don't want to cover the glutes. You don't want to be here, we want about an inch behind, okay? And the idea again here is, we want to show as much depth to the lower body as possible. You want to stay as side on as physically possible. You don't want to start creeping your hips around to face the judges. And you want to force this upper body round as much as possible as well. Like you can see here with Jolene, like basically side onto the hips, like you can't see any of this back hip here. It's all glute, hamstring, quad side on. And then we're still seeing like all of our top line here, which is creating a really nice little waist. And like, as the body fat comes down here, you're just going to see a smaller and smaller waist. So it's basically 90 degrees, like upper body is here, lower body is there. I'll eat my words. If you see any of them in a back pose with a half squat, like, I don't know, ring me and say you quit or something. Or if you see any of them, like, and I'm not talking like amateurs turning pro or people like coming at the bottom of pro shows. I'm talking like top elite athletes turning up at the Olympic, turning up at the Arnold, posing like this. Like you don't see it. Like it's not what you want to see. So if you've seen people like with like bent legs and stuff like that, it's just a terrible habit. Looks fucking awful. Don't do it. In this side pose, like. Once you're in this side pose, this is your first quarter turn to the right, like you've just done. Now you're going to turn to the back. Now there's a few ways to transition, we won't worry about it too much, but like my kind of favourite easy one is to kind of step back with one leg, shift the weight, and then you can literally turn around. So just shift the weight. What we want to see, you can say that. What we want to see, when we do Jolene, like you don't want to be super wide, because unless you've got absolute honking legs, it's just going to make your skin. Because you're going to have so much like space through your adductors and stuff, like you're going to look like a scarecrow. Like you don't want that. You don't want to stand so narrow that you like hide your adductors. You want like a good bit of width to show like size, but you don't want to be like too wide that you make yourself look skinny, which isn't very helpful, I know. But it's going to be slightly different for everybody, but a good gauge for like wellness, I would say, is your heels want to be pretty much where your shoulders are. For bikini, you probably want to be a little bit more like where your waist is, but for wellness, like your heels want to be pretty much where your shoulders are. I'm not leaning forward. I'm pushing back as much as I can through the glutes. If you do it through 2 stages, that's fine. Feet are in the right position, knees locked out, hips, hands. Push back through the glutes. And then what you want to do is lift up through the chest without squeezing the elbows together, keeping the elbows kind of wide, you want to see width through the delts, but lifting up through the chest as much as possible, like I always describe as like trying to push your boobs up to where like the ceiling meets the wall. Like you're trying to push in that diagonal direction, like you're really extending up through the chest. And you'll see my lower back has got like a really strong arch to it. So I'm pushing back through the glutes, but also staying tall. So like that back shot is going to look super tall and elongated, but I'm still going to be stretching through the glutes. So like, example here as well, Julian's hair is pretty much perfect. If it grows anymore, tell her to get it cut. Like, because we don't want to cover the glutes, we don't want to cover the bikini, but we want to cover the back. So like, that lower area of the back is perfect. Turn the toes out more. That's it. You can get away with a slightly wider stance if you turn the toes out more, if you haven't got as much density to your legs. So if your quads aren't as big as you'd like them to be, you can turn your toes out a little bit more to show them off more, and then you can stand a little bit wider, because when you do that, you bring the adductors through a little bit more.
If you turn from like this side, would you go into the other side from like front shot
Or if they just actually face the front, like, and do whatever's comfy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so once you've done your quarter turn facing the back and then you come into this,
Yeah.
and if they say face the front, I would come into that. If you then want to go in the other side, because then you're going to do comparisons or you're just going to stand in a line-up and you feel more comfortable, you can transition into the other side if you want.
Okay.
But I would always finish on this. Like if they say quarter turn to the right, just quarter turn and do what they're asking you to do.
And if they ask you to quarter turn again?
If they ask you to quarter turn again and do another round, they'll ask you and you can then transition back into what that would be. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
All right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's macro based, so tell you macros, and then,
cool.
and then she'll make meals for macros. And she'll
Nice.
send them to your house. So, like,
Very nice.
and if you use raw, you get discount. That went very well. Very glad. Don't have a lot to say, but no, it was really enjoyable. It was really good. I'm glad everybody came. Everyone seemed to get a lot out of it. I think I will do another one in the summer, maybe when I'm a little bit more shredded. A lot of good questions out of that and a lot of things to cover, I think, going forward. But it was nice to see everyone posing. It was nice to talk about the category. Lots of questions regarding like how long things might take to get where people want to be, how they should map out their off seasons, how their prep should look. And generally just like getting together to talk about the category, I think has been really positive. So I think everybody enjoyed it, and yeah, there'll be more in the future.